All right, let's get started. Let's look in our favorite book here and see what we come up with from Nassim Nicholas Taleb. For the compassionate, sorrow is more easily displaced by another sorrow than by joy. Boy, doesn't that explain a lot? For the compassionate, sorrow is more easily displaced by another sorrow than by joy. Yeah, compassion. It's not what you think it is. Yeah. Interesting stuff. I always love those aphorisms. Always insightful. What we're talking about today is public versus private. And I think there's a great deal of confusion around these concepts about public and private. And it matters a lot more than you think. And I think it affects a lot more stuff than people realize. And that's where the problem comes in when you don't have, we'll say, a healthy understanding of public and private, you just end up with a bunch of problems. And those problems are significant and they have all of these second order effects that people aren't aware of. And we're suffering, and the internet obviously makes this worse, from the problem of not being able to discern what should be public and what should be private. And that means we can't make proper connections. Our ability to understand the quality of relationships that we have is what is at stake, the intimacy crisis. We cannot understand the quality of our relationships with the world. And it's just manifested or reflected in this confusion between public and private. And that's just domicide all the way down. And it begs the question, what is valuable? And that turns out to be the heart of so many of the questions we're facing now. And let me go back into the private and talk about why we might prefer the private. The thing is, we want closeness. We want to belong. We want to be connected to things that are like us. But we are confused. And we think that knowing something private about a person conveys this mystical, undefined thing called authenticity, which brings us closer to the other person. So they've shared something private with us. We think they're being authentic. And now we're closer to them because we know something private about them. Right? And these are all flat world descriptions of the quality of a relationship between you and another person. But you can't really express quality using propositions, at least not sufficiently. And perhaps if you bring your authentic self, you'll be more connected to the world because magic? I don't know. That just seems to be the way people are acting and behaving in the world, as if they're just revealing their private thoughts, feelings, expressions, actions, past relationships, past events, that somehow you're better connected. And of course, they do this too quickly, right? That's social awkwardness. It's a significant problem. And that's supposed to convey something that is supposed to give you something, but it often doesn't end up giving you what you want. And the thing is, when somebody gives us access to their private whatever thoughts, feelings, lives, once we have access to that very private part of someone else, we start to presume motivations. But the motivations we prefer in the world are our own. They're not some unknown motivation that maybe we can't even understand. Some people are quite motivated to spend $1 million to get even with somebody. Of course, they likely have $10 million, and eh, what's 1 million out of 10? It may be worth it to them for a little vengeance, or so they perceive. That's not a motivation I understand. It's not a motivation I'd presume either, because who does that? Not me. We prefer our own motivations, not some motivation that we know nothing about, because we don't actually understand that person. We don't actually understand what motivates them and how. Having additional private information makes us believe that we can even understand that motivation. Because after all, we know our own motivations so well. Unless, of course, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson is right and you don't know what you're up to. So then, if you don't know what you are up to, why would you know what anybody else is up to? Why, indeed. Probably one of the reasons why Dr. Peterson makes so many people so uncomfortable. You want some comforting lies or do you want some Peterson? It really is one or the other. And the thing is, this is wrapped up, this whole public private distinction, and our ability to draw lines, to create boundaries, and to stand by them. Because boundaries are always messy. We want them to be clean and clear and to serve whatever purposes we want, but they often don't. I mean, you elect a guy and he didn't do what you want. I mean, he does some of the things you want, but not all of them. And sure, maybe a large enough people can never agree on lines and where they should be drawn. That's statistics, simple as. Right? You get a large enough set, the more people you get on board, the less agreement you're going to get about the details. Sorry. But that doesn't mean we can do without lines just because it's hard to get agreement when you have large numbers of people. That's part of the scaling of government. That's what government is there to do, reduce the number of people that have to agree so that at least you can get something done. And the thing is, this is the difference between the left, lefties, right? The moderates, which nobody ever talks about because everyone's stuck in binary thinking, and the right. The left will never commit to a line. They might agree to a line temporarily or say such a line exists, but when you try to have any of them draw one, even as a single person, they won't, or they can't, or they move it immediately with any example. They'll never commit to that one. And the moderates will agree in very similar lines, but and they'll commit and they'll say, person by person, absolutely, and here's my line. They'll do that, right? But it's their line, and so they won't agree on exactly where that line is. They'll fight over the line. The left won't fight over the line. They don't actually believe in the line. They don't care about the line. That's just not their thing. That's why they're often confused when things that are obvious to everybody else happen. It's like, well, yeah, of course Evergreen was gonna blow up. Like, wait, really? You didn't see that coming? And then when you're in the middle of it, you didn't notice what was happening? Really? Wow. That's it's amazing. On the right, they'll commit. They'll pick something to avoid having no lines, even though they know it's imperfect, because they know lines are required and necessary and important. And that's the difference. I mean, it's not the only difference, it's the primary difference, and it explains most of the other differences in voting, in political causes, in all of these things. That's why you can't find somebody, people on the left who vote Democrat, at least not in the United States, some of whom are for Israel and some of whom are for Palestine simultaneously. That's a little weird, isn't it? Unless what I said is true, in which case, oh, it makes perfect sense. And just drawing lines differently. They're not really agreeing on the lines. And they'll change them tomorrow, right? Are they pro-genocide or anti-genocide? I don't know, right? Are they pro-Christian or anti-Christian? Ah, well, it's a good question. Depends on what day it is, I guess. And you can notice this, right? And not by understanding public and private, but just by changing the parameters of what you're asking of the same person. And then you see the wishy-washy. We avoid the wishy-washy by switching the specific for the general and then the general back for the specific so that we can dodge the bigger question of, is there a group here and what is their belief? What will they do as a group? Oh, nothing, because they're on the left. Fair enough, no group. Identification against. That's their private belief, is a belief in whatever they need at the moment to be hedonistic effectively. And maybe it's just hedonistic about not wanting to face the horror of something like a war, or the horror of the people you support being the bad guys, or the horror of the politician you believed in failing, whatever it is. That's also hedonism. And this spreads out just into politics, we'll say, or impacts not just politics, but is a public death valuable? Because I see it all the time now. You've got Charlie Kirk, he's murdered publicly, and then he's a martyr. It's like, I don't think that's how martyrdom works, but I I guess. And there's the question of, was he in the club or out of the club, and how much of a martyr and why and what? And the thing is, all deaths are public. I mean, who dies in a cave alone? Maybe a few people, but wow. I mean, we're missing the discernment, the larger question, which is, what parts of our death, or our life for that matter, should be public and which parts should be private. It can't be just our flaws. All our flaws should be private and all our good things should be public. I mean, that can happen, and maybe that's necessary under certain circumstances or something, but I mean, it's a discussion worth having for sure. What are we valuing when we're trying to discern the value of a public death? Did we show off our bravery in dying alone with our cats? Materially successful, but alone? No, no. That's the Scott Adams death, or the Charlie Kirk opposite, where he has everything, but he dies anyway. It doesn't do, neither of them does any good, right? Because true death looks more like Christopher Lee. You have no idea how cool he was, right? Until you find out these little trivial tidbits and whatnot. But you know what? You always knew he was cool anyhow. Isn't that interesting? He didn't need to have a public death to be cool. And he had a public life and a private life, and he didn't mix them. And the more you find out about his so-called private life, the cooler he gets. Because there was a proper line drawn the whole time he was alive. It's very important. And this inability to see this line between public and private and keep it separate, hold that boundary, is also an inability to properly value things in the world and to notice what values are manifesting. which explains a lot. Not all value is good or of the right type. It's discernment all the way down. And this is really important because we're trading that depth of your relationship, that private to public depth, for breadth. How much stuff did you do in your life? What? It's a dangerous game. Let me give you an example. It's easy to get fooled into helping criminals or even enemies because their private lives of not having enough food, or maybe coming from an impoverished country or an impoverished upbringing, or dying of cancer, or needing daycare, right? When those private things are exposed to the wider public, then the wider public wants the government to step in and do something. Food pantries, um, free cancer medicine, uh, daycares. Okay, so the government wants everybody to open daycare centers to help out these single moms. And then enemies of the United States, because definitely are, like, you can only have one allegiance and one loyalty to one place, guys. It's not that hard to figure out. They figure out, oh, this is a priority for the government. The government is outsourcing daycare. Of course, the government shouldn't be in the business of daycare. That would be dumb. The government's terrible at everything. We certainly don't want them doing daycare. That's actually important, right? And so it outsources it, as it does with everything, right? And wham, you have lots of fraud. Because of course you would. Obviously, this daycare is needed. We've got to get it out to the people. We don't want a lot of bureaucracy in the way, right? So, of course, this has to be done quickly, which means it needs a low barrier to entry. It needs to be easy for people to start daycare centers. It needs as little bureaucracy as possible so things go as quickly and run as smoothly as possible. And no one is allowed to question, because that would slow things down. We don't want to get bogged down. We've got to get this daycare out to everybody. And it's a hard problem, right? All because you saw the private struggle of one person and assumed what would fix it for that person. And we're often wrong about even that. But what is the real flaw here? The issue is at the level of the personal, private perspective, which everyone lately is holding up as a good thing. This is one of the side effects of individualism, right? Which causes materialism, among other things. Materialism also causes individualism. Objectivism causes both, right? Either. The thing is that solutions to the exact same problem have a wide variation across populations, right? The more people you have, the more solutions you're going to need for the same problem to get rid of that problem. So you can't apply one solution and get rid of the problem for everybody. So one single mother might need someone to watch her kids while she's at work or something, while another one just needs a different job, maybe one that she's only working during school hours, like working at the school. That's what most people have done for most of history in the United States, by the way, to solve this issue. Not a big deal. Well, really, both of these just need family help, or to get a loving husband instead. So, I mean, there is a way to resolve childcare. It's called family. And barring that, it's called husband, right? Where both parties aren't working. This isn't that hard. It's just involving the government in this is just asking for fraud. And you may think, oh, daycare solves a problem. No, it just creates new problems, because no one cares for your children better than you do. Sorry, it's never going to be any different. It's always going to be exactly that way. There's nothing I can do about it. I was born into this world with that particular limitation, just like you. Cry me a river if you don't like the fact that that's the thing that works the best. Nothing I can do about it. And this lack of separation is part of the flat world issue, which causes the loss of the ability to discern proper separation as such. We do not know where we end and other things begin. There's no difference between the public and the private for most people. When we want to be part of something bigger, we can over identify with someone else and their condition or their struggle or their situation. Like Scott Adams. A bunch of older people start thinking more about death. Along comes Scott Adams. Oh, I remember him. Yeah, he's a little older than me, maybe, or maybe he's my age, whatever. And he's struggling with death, and I'm struggling with death, and we're all online, and we've been doing these long form conversations about things. So here's just another long form conversation about a dignified way to die. But in that case, it's rather clear he's not good. None of what happened was good. It may have been public, but it wasn't good. The fact that it was public wasn't good. The whole thing wasn't good. And that's the problem. The guy is on his deathbed. He didn't confess. He didn't repent or do his penance. But instead, he selfishly declared that the statistics were in his favor for a deathbed conversion. And all that does is prove that Martin Luther was correct when he criticized the church, because aside from indulgences, deathbed confessions were a problem. And it's a similar problem, right? Oh, I do what I want, and then when I'm done doing what I want, I buy my indulgence, or I do everything I want while I'm alive until I'm almost dead, and then I do my conversion. That isn't a win. That's a big loss for everyone, because Luther did nothing but harm to the world, ultimately. So making public your selfish decision that, well, hey, it doesn't do any harm, I'll just like declare myself a Christian. Like that doesn't even work in any Protestant denomination. You're not in the club, dude. You didn't get catechized. Now, maybe a lot of Protestants don't catechize, but he didn't even say the words for the denominations that say these words and you're in the club. Why is this better? But you want that butt in the seat. You want that win. See, Christianity wins on your deathbed. It's like, I don't know, man. That's pretty sad. I mean, talk about opening a critique for your religious belief. Wow. Again, like Luther went over this. This isn't that hard. This is not a win. This is a flat pack loss. And making it public, why? Because otherwise you die alone with your cats? I mean, maybe, I guess, but that's selfish too. Why don't you just die alone with your cats? That's the life you ended up choosing. However, you ended up choosing it is not up to me. I don't know. Well, why are you sharing all this with me? I don't want to know any of this. I don't care if you were successful and wrote some books. Like, I liked your book. I read Win Bigly. It was a pretty decent book. I'm sure it helped quite a few people, but lots of things help people. So, whatever. Not a very high bar in my estimation. It's a selfish idea. They only need to do a little work at the end because of accomplishments that you had during your life anyway, and then you can avoid all the penalties, and that gives us hope for hedonism, but not goodness. It takes away all the goodness because it's basically the message is hedonism until you need something else, and then at the last minute you get the thing you need. What? No. No work, no effort. And why? Because we can't see that a public conversation about your deepest thoughts about life, the universe, and everything is not necessarily a good thing. This is the same problem as with the suicide hotlines. So you go to a town, have a few suicides, and then they go, "Oh, we need a suicide hotline." So they put suicide hotline signs in, and the suicides go up. A little weird, huh? No, because the world is attention. Jonathan Peugeot has tried to explain to people, and that matters a lot. Matters a lot. Call attention to suicide and ask people if they've thought about it. Well, that's the same as saying, don't think of a teddy bear. Whatever you do, don't think of a teddy bear. Are these people stupid? I've I've known this trick since I was young. Don't think of a teddy bear. Duh. Don't do that. Some things need to remain private. Oh, sometimes I harken back to the time I was on mushrooms and I had a heroic journey. What? No. Don't tell people that. What is what is wrong with you? Why would you do that? Can harken back to the Matrix. What was said is for you and you alone. Yeah, they play with this public private thing in that movie quite a bit. I didn't talk about it in my Matrix live stream quite so much, but you go back and watch this public private situation. And this idea of, granted, when you're in a relationship with somebody people know, this idea that that private relationship causes a jealousy because somebody held back their private feelings. At least that's what's implied. And that causes a betrayal. How interesting. And it's the thing with these sorts of things. We don't have discernment for the public versus the private, but we should. And what should be private? And there's all kinds of contributing factors to this particular problem, right? There's these ways in which we don't want forbidden knowledge. We don't want anything to be on a censored or banned list. Some things need to be censored and banned. It becomes a real issue when you talk about Mein Kampf. Everybody wants to ban that book. And they're worried about Catcher in the Rye. Well, you should be. First of all, it's not particularly good literature. I hate to say it, but it's not good literature. I mean, I read it, but also, yeah, wasn't too impressed. It's fascinating to people who are borderline schizophrenic for obvious reasons, but or who have other mental ailments. But that's not good. Don't think about a teddy bear. Whatever you do, don't think about a teddy bear. Yeah, that's not a plus. I told you not to think about the damn teddy bear. What's wrong with you? Don't you listen? You don't know what you're up to. That's the problem. And you don't know what other people are up to. But you think because you have better access to their private lives that you do. And it's all an illusion. We need the private. We need things to be kept from us. Because you thought about the damn teddy bear again, didn't you? That should have been kept from you, the fact of the teddy bear. Otherwise, you're going to keep thinking about it. Even though I told you not to think, why is this hard for you? We need the private, and we need private things to stay hidden, to stay private. Which ones? Well, that's a hard question, but let's get the discernment first. People who are sneaky like to fool you by pretending as though you can't take the first step because the second step is too hard. I was like, well, yeah, if you run past the first step and you try to solve the second step without even agreeing that the first step exists and what the shape of it is and getting on the same step with the other person, yeah, the second step is damn near impossible. I agree. Also, that's a trick, and those people are not good people. I mean, they may not be intentionally malicious, but I'm a pragmatist. I couldn't care less what you think your intent is, much less what your intent actually is. It doesn't matter at all to me. Pragmatism for the win. Maybe next week we'll do pragmatism and I can explain what pragmatism is and why it's so effective. It's not pragmatic for you to share your private life in public. I don't care if you're going through something that other people need to know other people go through. That needs to be shared privately, not publicly. One of the problems of sharing things with people publicly is that you have to cater to an audience. It's already not for whoever's watching. My live streams are not for the people watching. They're for a theoretical audience. I have no idea if I'm hitting my audience. I have no idea how well my live streams are getting through the points I want to make. It's all just practice and guessing for me. I'm okay with that. That's part of the mission here. And I think it's important because we all have to try and do things and get somebody. And I know to some extent that they're effective in the way that makes me happy enough, we'll say, makes me feel like the goal is being accomplished. That's why they've been going on for so long. These are not new. And so that's important. But only I know that. No one who's gotten some help from my videos is publicly saying, oh, this is the help that I got. This is what was it, that's not happening. They might be doing that in private. That's where it's most useful. Oh, you're struggling with this? Oh, I was struggling with that too. Let me introduce you to a channel that helped me. Maybe it will help you. You don't need somebody out there broadcasting because then it's advertising, right? Like this channel will help you if you have depression. What? How do you know? You don't know that person you're talking to. You've never met them. Likely never will meet them. So some things need to remain private. This issue of forbidden knowledge is covered in Plato's Republic. Nobody ever talks about it. They only talk about parts of the book they're wrong about for some weird reason, or they skip over the ending of the book. I don't know why. Something's going on there. But forbidden knowledge is required. It's important. Private things need to remain private. Otherwise, you'll think about that teddy bear or suicide. And yeah, there's a time for revealing, and some things that are private need revealing, and that's discernment. But first, let's get to the agreement that private exists. Then we can discuss where the line of private and public exists. But let's just take the first step first, because it's really important. You can't sit there and cry free speech and then understand the difference between public and private, because it's a similar problem. Where is the line? There has to be a line. The biggest free speech proponents in the world don't like say, oh, well, he's inciting to violence. Don't lock him up. It's free speech. I've never heard anyone say that. Not anyone who say supported that, but then didn't support other free speech, because that's what they do. They go, oh, no, my speech should be free, or the speech I like should be free, but everybody else's speech should be censored. That's what they do. And the thing is, if you deal with that one person, you can see that flaw in them. You can see that they're lying. You can see it. But you have to not get confused by, oh, well, this group. Okay, but we were talking about one person. And if one person continually flip flops on a number of issues, they're not reliable. They're dangerous. Maybe they're intentional and maybe they're not, but I don't care. Intentional towards what? Their intention could switch every 10 minutes. That happens. I've met people like that. It's scary. They exist, though. You got to be careful with that. You need discernment of public and private. You need to think carefully about what you tell people. You need to not advertise AIDS drugs on freaking TV. What are we doing? That is a violation of the proper demarcation for public and private. I don't even want to know that there are people taking AIDS drugs that need to be told, be careful who you partner up with and don't forget to tell them. I thought this was all done away with a long time ago. I was happier when my brain was not overloaded with this information. Making everything public causes more cognitive load. It causes a flood of information and destroys your ability to discern. It's not good for you. It's not good for everybody else. It's not even good for the person doing it. It gives them a certain amount of power over the rest of the world, though. Maybe they're doing it for power, probably. But they're not doing it for the good because it's not good. That's the problem. It's not good. We can't even discern public and private. How are we supposed to discern good and bad? Maybe keeping something private is neither good nor bad, which is fine by me because there's a neutral state. That's for sure. We're between heaven and earth. What do you think that is? Not heaven and it's not earth. That's why we're bringing heaven down to earth. Well, dragging heaven and dragging earth up towards heaven. It's not that hard. There's a middle ground. But we got to draw the line first before we can identify that middle ground. Keep your private stuff private. Share it with only in private with the people that need it. I'm not against, we'll say, group therapy or Alcoholics Anonymous, but also predators go there too because they know that's where you can get more prey. It's not all upside. Very dangerous. The world is a dangerous place. And you need a private place to be, private place to go, private things to have that are your own. So that you don't feel scrutinized all the time. It's very emotionally draining. A lot of celebrities take their lives because they don't have any privacy. You need a private life. You need people that you can discuss private things with. Privately, though, you don't need to be on some YouTube channel talking about the rash you have in the place. That's not good. That should be private. You should share that with people that your relationship is such that they can handle that, that they're willing to handle that. You don't want to force this on other people, but some people do want to force it on other people. And hopefully, this gives you a little bit of discernment to see when people are doing that. Scott Adams didn't want to die alone. Well, I got news for you, buddy. You sucked at creating close relationships with people. That's why you ended up with cats. And you got your books and your money. That's fantastic. Good for you, I guess. And you got your get out of jail free card at the end. Maybe, although I don't think so. And you got everybody praising you for it because they're all stupid somehow. And they see that as a win? Ugh, no wonder the new atheists did so well. Christian apologists are about the dumbest people on the planet most of the time. It's just terrible. Terrible. Charlie Kirk was a martyr. Oh my goodness. Anybody who publicly proclaimed they were a Christian or a believer in Jesus or whatever, they're all martyrs when they die? Or they're all martyrs if they're killed? Like what? I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me. This is why you lose the argument, because your argument is wrong and it's dumb. You lose the argument because you're stuck in the materialism. You're stuck in the binary frame. You're stuck not drawing the lines clearly between public and private. And that's all I have for you on that topic.